Imagine for a second realizing that the terrifying, multi-headed, blood-drinking figure chasing you through the afterlife is actually just, well, your own mind trying to wake you up.
Right, yeah. It completely flips the script.
It really does.
Mm.
Because when you normally think about the ultimate universal mystery of what happens when we die, your mind probably floods with fear.
Oh, absolutely. It's the great unknown.
Yeah, an abyss we generally try to avoid looking into. But what if instead of approaching that transition with, you know, grasping resistance, you could view it with utter clarity?
That's the core of it, really. Shifting from panic to a profound open curiosity.
Exactly. What if the entire progression was laid out not as a sudden plunge into darkness, but as this luminous, perfectly natural unfolding, like as serene and tranquil as a traditional Thangka painting, just, revealing its intricate details one by one?
I love that analogy because
Okay.
we are deeply conditioned in our culture to view death as a definitive ending,
Why?
just a sudden stop.
Right, like hitting a wall.
Yeah, exactly. But the perspective we are exploring today asks you to look at it as an unveiling instead.
An unveiling.
Yes, an opportunity for profound recognition. It's a moment where the distractions of physical life just sort of drop away, leaving only the purest essence of your awareness.
So today we are taking a deep dive into the Tibetan Buddhist teachings surrounding the transition of death. We're specifically focusing on the Dalai Lama's introductory commentary to these ancient teachings and the profound instructions for navigating the intermediate states.
And our mission here is really to unpack the core mechanics of the continuity of consciousness.
Because what becomes beautifully apparent when you really study this tradition is that these teachings aren't, some spooky esoteric manual for a mythical afterlife.
Not at all. They offer a highly practical, deeply illuminating guide to understanding the exact nature of your own mind right now, in this very moment.
To really grasp what happens at the end of life, though, we kind of have to start by completely dismantling our normal, everyday understanding of who we are while we are alive.
We do,
Yeah.
which is harder than it sounds.
Right, because we walk around with this deeply ingrained feeling that there is a permanent, autonomous I, a fixed soul or a distinct pilot sitting somewhere behind our eyes, calling the shots.
Yeah, we treat ourselves as solid objects,
Exactly.
which is a profound illusion. Because if you closely observe your own direct experience, you will never find a permanent unitary self.
You just find pieces.
Right, exactly. What you call you is actually a dynamic, interdependent flow of mental and physical events.
The tradition breaks this down into 5 psychophysical aggregates, I think.
Yes. And rather than just listing them off like a textbook, think about how a single moment of your experience is constructed. You have a physical form.
Okay, my body.
Right. And that form encounters a feeling, say, the warmth of the sun on your skin.
Nice.
Then your discrimination immediately labels it. You think, this is pleasant.
Right.
Then your motivational tendencies react, forming a desire to stay in the sun. And your consciousness holds that entire sequence together in one cohesive moment.
So my sense of self is really just a convenient label pasted over this constantly churning river of physical features, instincts, emotions, and thoughts.
That's a perfect way to put it.
It looks like one solid, permanent river from a distance, but, up close, it is entirely different water from moment to moment.
It's entirely different water.
Yeah.
And realizing this brings us to a foundational distinction, which is the difference between the gross self and the subtle self.
Okay, let's break that down. The gross self is essentially the container, right?
Yes, exactly. It is your physical body of flesh and bone, your sensory organs, and your conditioned everyday mind that reacts to the world around you.
It's the temporary person you identify with right now.
Right. But inside that temporary container is the subtle self.
And the subtle self is composed of the subtle mind, which is pure, luminous awareness with the sheer power of cognition.
Yes. And paired with it is the subtle body or subtle wind. That's the pure energy that activates that awareness.
So these two, pure awareness and its activating energy, they're inextricably conjoined.
They are. They are your ultimate nature.
So while the gross body and the conditioned mind will eventually break down, that subtle continuum carries on.
It has to, logically.
Yeah, and the Dalai Lama uses this really beautiful analogy about the weather to explain this causal continuum, right?
He does, yeah.
Like, think about the weather today. It is distinctly different from the weather yesterday. But today's weather didn't just appear out of nowhere.
Right. It was generated by yesterday's atmospheric pressures and temperatures.
Exactly. There is an unbroken chain of cause and effect.
And we could push that weather analogy even further. Imagine if those weather patterns carried an imprint, a momentum that fundamentally shaped the next storm.
Okay.
This touches on the philosophical mechanics of why consciousness continues. Mind and matter have distinctly different substantial causes.
Meaning they come from different base materials.
Exactly. Material things, your cells, your bones, can only come into being based on other material entities, like atoms and particles. Matter creates matter. But a moment of pure awareness cannot be born from a physical atom. A moment of mind can only come into being based on a previous moment of mind.
Oh, wow, that makes perfect sense. Like, a physical brain might process thoughts, but the sheer subjective experience of awareness itself has to have a continuous, non-physical lineage.
Precisely.
Mm.
Therefore, at the level of the subtle mind and subtle energy, there is a beginningless and endless continuum.
Just like the weather.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Just as today's weather is born from yesterday's, your current moment of consciousness is born from the previous one, stretching backward and forward in an unbroken stream.
Okay, so if the gross body and the everyday mind are just temporary conditions, what happens to that subtle energy when the gross physical container finally breaks?
Well, it can't just vanish.
Right, but the transition must be incredibly jarring, no?
Actually, it is described as a highly systematic, sequential dissolution. The art of dying is not a sudden cliff you fall off.
It's not a crash.
No, it is a gradual, intricate withdrawing, like the petals of a flower closing. The physical elements that make up your gross body begin to dissolve into one another.
Let's walk through what that actually feels like subjectively, because the text is so specific. First, the earth element dissolves into the water element.
Right.
That would be the sensation of immense heaviness, right? Like you are physically sinking into the bed, just losing your solidity and strength.
Yes, the physical structure is failing. Then, water dissolves into fire.
And subjectively, this is experienced as a profound drying up.
Exactly. The body begins to lose its fluids and its moisture. Then, fire dissolves into wind.
Which means the body's vital heat recedes, starting from the extremities and moving inward.
Yes, and finally wind dissolves into space. The physical breath stops entirely.
Wow.
The gross levels of energy that powered your earthly senses completely shut down.
And that brings us to the exact moment of death. The gross consciousness has powered down, the vital energy absorbs inward, and suddenly there is this profound unveiling.
The great clarity.
Yeah. Without the noise of the physical senses or the chatter of the everyday mind, what arises is the inner radiance, the clear light of reality.
It dawns utterly empty and naked, like a cloudless sky.
It's the point where all your conceptual elaborations, your lifelong fears, your judgments, and your labels have completely vanished.
You are left resting in the fundamental nature of your own awareness. It's the inextricable union of emptiness and luminosity.
But wait. If the ultimate reality is revealed to every single person at the exact moment the physical body shuts down this totally naked, pure radiance, it seems like death is just an automatic enlightenment button.
You would think so, right?
Yeah. But we clearly aren't all liberated. We are still caught in this cycle of confusion. There's a disconnect here.
You have zeroed in on the most crucial mechanical issue of the entire transition. The reason we are not instantly liberated lies in the vast difference between Sims and Rigpa.
Okay, what are those?
Sims is our ordinary, dualistic, everyday mind. It is the mind that judges, categorizes, likes, dislikes, and conceptualizes.
That's the chattering voice in our heads.
Exactly. Rigpa, on the other hand, is pure non-dual awareness. It is that naked inner radiance.
And because we spend our entire lives utterly identified with Sims, we have no idea how to recognize Rigpa.
Precisely the problem.
Yeah.
Because most people spend decades exclusively familiar with their ordinary dualistic thoughts, they simply do not recognize pure awareness when it dawns.
It's too foreign.
Yes. When that vast, luminous inner radiance appears at the moment of death, an untrained mind experiences it simply as an overwhelming shock.
Oh.
They experience a sudden blackout, a total loss of consciousness. They just faint.
Oh, wow. They sleep right through the alarm.
They really do. They mistake the ultimate reality of their own nature for sheer nothingness.
That's heartbreaking.
It is. They miss the opportunity for liberation right then and there because they lack the contemplative training to recognize their own pure essence.
So, if we are so deeply conditioned to our ordinary mind that we miss that split-second window of pure radiance, where does that leave the consciousness?
Well, the subtle energy hasn't vanished.
Right, but the physical body is gone. So this is where the concept of the Bardo truly opens up.
It is, and it's important to clarify. A Bardo isn't a physical place you travel to.
Like a waiting room in the sky or something.
Exactly, no. The word literally translates to gap or transitional state. When the consciousness awakens from that initial faint, having missed the clear light, it enters the intermediate state of reality.
And the subtle energy that was dormant begins to unfold and manifest.
Yes, and it manifests in ways that are spectacular and deeply overwhelming.
This is where the visions begin, the dawning of the peaceful and wrathful deities.
The tradition outlines the appearance of 42 peaceful deities and 58 wrathful deities, appearing in blinding radiances of 5-colored light.
But we have to understand the mechanics of these visions. They are not external entities.
No, they're not.
This is like the most vital point to understand. These figures are not external judges descending from the heavens, and they aren't demons rising from the underworld to punish you.
Exactly. They are the pure, spontaneous manifestations of your own mind.
It's all you.
It is all you. The peaceful deities, which are quiescent and beautifully radiant, represent the natural, purified essence of your own mind. They are the manifestation of your transformed attachments.
But then the landscape shifts.
It does. And the wrathful deities appear towering, multi-headed, blood-drinking figures engulfed in flames. These are what are called the Harukas.
Honestly, it sounds like a complete nightmare.
It does, if you misunderstand them. A Haruka is not a demon. A Haruka is essentially a fully enlightened being taking on an intensely fierce, aggressive form.
So they're on your side.
Completely. They are the dynamic, protective aspect of the peaceful deities. They represent your mind's active transformation of aversion and deep-seated delusion.
Oh, okay. So they adopt these terrifying characteristics to aggressively confront and dismantle the deceased's lingering ego and stubborn conditioning.
Yes.
It is so similar to a hyperlucid dream. Imagine you were in a dream state where every single one of your deeply buried habits, your repressed fears, your loves, and your aversions are suddenly projected outward in brilliant color.
Taking the shape of towering, thunderous figures.
Right, and if you don't know you are dreaming, you run in absolute terror. You try to escape your own mind, which is, well, impossible.
Right, impossible.
But the trick isn't to run away or to fight them. It's to realize that everything you are seeing is a projection of yourself.
Linger on how profound that psychological insight is for a moment. This ancient tradition understood that our external terrors are often our own internal aversions taking shape.
It's incredibly profound.
The entire purpose of the instructions for the intermediate state is to guide the deceased to this exact realization. The instruction is simple, but unimaginably difficult in practice.
Which is?
Do not be attached to the beautiful, peaceful visions, and do not be terrified by the wrathful, flaming ones. Relax and rest in a non-conceptual state.
You just have to recognize them.
Yes. If you can recognize these overwhelming radiances instantly, just as a mother instantly recognizes her own child in a crowd, or as you would instantly recognize an old friend the moment you lock eyes, you achieve confidence.
You see through the illusion.
You do. You recognize these terrifying forms as natural manifestations of actual reality. And in that single moment of pure recognition, the illusion shatters, and you attain Buddhahood.
Liberation just by recognizing your own reflection.
Exactly.
But let's be honest, if the visions are that blindingly vivid and the deceased is experiencing all of this with a heightened, super-sensitive awareness, it is incredibly likely they will flee in terror from their own mind.
It happens all the time.
So how can the living help them navigate this incredibly dangerous and confusing gap?
This is where the profound practices of compassion come into play. The tradition provides incredibly practical methods.
Like the Great Liberation by hearing.
Yes, which involves reading the guiding instructions aloud to the deceased for 49 days. And there is also the liberation by wearing.
Which is placing sacred mantra amulets directly on the body to confer blessings and protection. But why does reading aloud to someone who no longer has physical ears actually work?
Because in this intermediate state, the deceased has assumed a mental body. They are no longer hindered by a physical body of flesh and blood.
So their senses are different.
Very different. Without the heavy, dulling anchor of physical matter, they possess a subtle, supernormal cognitive ability. Their awareness is many times clearer and more expansive than when they were alive.
Almost like a form of clairvoyance.
Exactly. They can hear the teachings perfectly, no matter how far they have wandered into the intermediate states, simply by the reader directing their intention toward them.
And because of that supersensitivity, there is a very strict, compassionate rule for the living, right? Relatives and friends must not cry, shout, mourn, or wail in the presence of the body.
It sounds harsh, I know, because it goes against every natural human instinct we have when we lose someone we love.
Yeah, you just want to grieve.
Of course. But you have to understand the mechanics of the mental body. Because the deceased is so highly sensitive and often deeply confused about what is happening to them, hearing the wailing of their loved ones causes immense agitation.
It violently pulls them back toward their earthly attachment.
Yes, it distracts them and disrupts their ability to concentrate on the luminous visions unfolding before them.
So the weeping actually becomes a tether that drags them back down into confusion.
Exactly. Instead, the living are instructed to maintain a space of deep serenity, to engage in virtuous activity, and to read the guiding instructions clearly and calmly.
Acting as a steady, reassuring beacon.
Yes.
And the analogies used in the text to describe how powerful just hearing these words can be are incredibly striking.
They really paint a picture.
They do. Like, the impact of hearing the teachings in this fluid state is compared to a catapult, launching the consciousness toward clarity. Or think of a massive, heavy tree trunk.
Right, the tree trunk analogy.
On solid land, 100 people couldn't lift this tree trunk. But if you float that same massive trunk in water, it becomes weightless. A single person can steer it effortlessly wherever they want it to go.
Or turning a galloping horse just by pulling its bridle. Because the mental body in the Bardo is so incredibly fluid and unanchored, a single, clear reminder from the living can instantly pivot their entire consciousness away from terror and toward liberation.
Which brings up a staggering claim about the boundless compassion of these practices. It is taught that even someone who has committed massive negative actions, what we would consider inexpiable crimes, can be liberated just by hearing these words in the Bardo.
It is a radical claim.
How is that even mechanically possible?
It is possible because of the foundational premise we discussed at the very beginning. The fundamental subtle nature of every being's mind is already pure. Always.
No matter what they've done.
Right. The negative actions, the earthly conditioning, the terrible karma, these are just dense clouds obscuring the sun. But the sun itself is entirely untouched.
I see.
So in the intermediate state, when the deceased is overwhelmed by their own karmic projections, hearing the reading acts as a direct connecting tube.
It pierces right through the clouds.
It reestablishes their link to their own inherent virtue. The teaching liberates simply by being heard, because it triggers a remembrance of what they fundamentally are.
It just cuts right through.
It does. It transforms their perception in an instant, cutting through the delusion of the gross mind and allowing the subtle mind's natural radiance to shine through.
It is such a beautiful, dignified way to approach the end of life. Not as a frantic, terrifying struggle to hold on to a failing physical form, but as a guided, compassionate release into one's own ultimate nature. It turns an abyss into a canvas.
And if we bring this all back to you, the listener, it is vital to remember that these teachings aren't just a preparatory manual for your final moments on Earth.
They're for right now.
They are instructions for how to relate to your mind right now, today. The Dalai Lama notes that when we view life and death from this broader perspective of an unbroken continuum of consciousness, the deep existential fear begins to dissolve.
It loses its grip.
Exactly. Dying is simply like changing our clothes when our old ones are worn out. We discard the old, heavy physical form, but the continuum of pure, luminous awareness carries on undisturbed.
It completely removes the horror from the process. The terrifying unknown becomes this intimate journey of self-discovery.
And there's a fascinating parallel drawn directly from these teachings, one that anchors this ancient wisdom firmly in your daily life.
Oh, this is my favorite part.
The 3 stages we've discussed, the moment of death, the intermediate state of reality, and eventual rebirth, perfectly mirror the daily, ordinary cycle of your own consciousness.
So we experience a microcosm of death every single day.
We do. The physical dissolution at death, where the gross senses fall away and leave only the naked inner radiance, is exactly what happens mechanically when you fall into deep, dreamless sleep.
The physical world just shuts down.
Yes. Then, the intermediate Bardo state, with its subtle, non-substantive appearances and projections of the mind, perfectly mirrors the state of dreaming. Your mind creates entirely convincing worlds out of pure energy.
And finally, rebirth.
Right. Taking on a new physical form in rebirth mirrors the act of waking up and entering the gross physical world each morning. You rehearse the death process every single night.
That is just incredible. So as we wrap up this deep dive, consider this tonight. as you lie in bed and your physical senses begin to naturally dissolve.
As the sounds of the room fade.
Yeah, as the heavy earth element of your body sinks into the mattress, as your ordinary chattering thoughts begin to quiet down, can you catch a glimpse of that clear inner radiance before the dreams begin?
It's right there.
Can you rest, even for a split second, in that pure, naked awareness? Because that clarity, that serene, luminous calm, isn't waiting for you at the end of your life. It is the very canvas upon which your entire existence is painted right now.